Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Strat Gamer here, providing you with the new Anno 1800 stream. And we are starting again exactly where we left off into the last stream. We are still building the Skyline Tower. We started the last level last time. The game ran for just a bit after that time. And as you can see now, the tower is almost finished. So we're definitely gonna look at that. That's gonna be part of this DLC or of this stream tonight. Of course, if anybody is watching, don't hesitate to share any thoughts, any questions that you may have. The second thing we're gonna do is we're gonna start looking into my plan for the max investor run. I want to explain a bit how my run may be different from some of the other YouTubers out there, and also show you stuff min-maxing secrets. Won't say a bit more right away, but definitely keen to go into that. I see right now we don't have a lot of people yet watching, but don't hesitate when you join to leave a small message in the comments and the chat so that I can see who's there, and we can start answering also your thoughts and questions. And now we do have one quest coming. The tower is on fire, or something is wrong. Definitely, at least we can see, this is not normal, and we have to make a decision. And this is a very important decision to get the better safe than sorry achievement. We have to make the right decision here, so I will of course try to explain and show you. As we can see, this is a problem so terribly wrong. For the bank at it, I don't care, just make it stop. And here we have to choose to either ask Miss Jenny or to let it fall. Of course, if you want to save it, we have to ask Miss Jenny for help. And we have to find her. And here, you can look around. Where is she? Because we know she is somewhere here. For some reason I do not see her. It's because I was selecting the tower. Let's select the tower. Oh, okay. Now it's starting.
Is this your idea of a joke?
It's never been Miss Jenny.
I don't know if it's a bug, but I know one in somebody else's videos I've seen her sort of jump out of the box, but here I don't see any boxes. You may have experienced a number of bugs in the last few, let's say 2 weeks since the DLC went out. There definitely was a few bugs in the DLC itself, but also more so, let's say, with Ubisoft Connect. Hopefully this is all resolved by now. I also had a bit of these problems in the last few weeks, the last week, sorry. Even if at the same time, to be honest, I just didn't have a lot of time to play. So that's also sort of a good thing in disguise. She is here. See? She came out of the box, but somehow the box wasn't appearing before. And she's going to basically reveal that she's been the one doing all of the problems so far. See this nice Easter egg here. These people just waiting here. Oh, sometimes those quests take so long.
Look at that scraper down there. I worked that job a few months ago. Thought it was like I'm done playing charades. I'm not Miss Jenny.
See, she's done playing charades. I'm not Miss Jenny, not your secretary, not your engineer. She's gonna show us. We need to select her.
You can't be.
See a few people joining. Don't hesitate to share. Now, who is there? What you're hoping to see tonight? That's maybe different from what I shared at the beginning of the plan.
I've been the one trying to stop you all
And
along.
here we can
I
see
want
her face has changed.
hoping to improve working
She's been the one trying to stop
found
it all
somebody
from
more
the start.
popular, Donny, who actually cares.
Yeah, sometimes it sure does feel like they...
Miss Theodora, I
I can't fix it. You're right. You've been right.
This tower is a
Help
crumbling
me,
mess. Get
please.
us out of it, please.
He's poor Donny.
Please.
That's what happened when you
Your
don't
ship has returned from its voyage.
give what's necessary to the engineers. Typical problem.
Your ship has returned from its voyage.
Come on. We want to see the final tower. I want to show you what's important to choose at the end to get the right bonus. Come on. I don't know why this quest is so long. It's still paused until we get the next choice. I'm at full speed, but somehow it's definitely not taking full speed. Okay, finally. Deliver to Theodora 50 tons of lacquer and 50 tons of steel beam. Good thing is that there's no deadline in terms of time. So even if you don't have, in particular the lacquer and reserve, you can still operate. So we're gonna cheat a bit. Because I don't think I have enough, to be honest. We're going, let's check actually. Usually if you have enough, they tell you do you want to give it. So I'm guessing I don't have enough. Yeah, I definitely don't have enough. Let's do this. And now we have enough. Perfect. So I'm just doing this with remote to show you. I will of course not use it, for my record or things like this. But now I just want to finish this tower, show you its benefits, how it works, small thing that you may not have noticed about it before we move on to the plan around min-maxing secrets and min-maxing, goals. And this will be quite different from some of the other YouTubers out there. You may have seen the recent video by Fox. For his plan, he's actually going to start using the Docklands to produce all of the classic investor goods. If we look at an investor tower, at least that's what I understood. Maybe Fox, if I'm wrong, don't hesitate to. And if you're watching, don't hesitate to put it in the chat or in the comments. But my understanding is you're going to use the Docklands to provide all of these goods here. So all the, let's say, all the investor goods, non-skyscrapers. And then you're going to build, provide, let's say, in a natural way, all of the skyscrapers goods. Versus for me, I will reiterate that I will actually try to get a record without Dockland at all. I really want to show how much we can produce, but there's definitely some twist to that, and we'll get into it. For Fox, if I understood correctly, he said that if thinking about something like 7 million people. I also saw earlier today that Zazuno has also started his new record playthrough. He's actually, it seems, planning 10 million. Obviously, it's all in German, and I have to admit that I don't speak German, and he doesn't have subtitles, in English in his videos. So I may have missed something, but yeah, my understanding is he's gonna do 10 million, population using fully the Docklands, so full Docklands. Whereas on my side, again, I will not use the dockland. I don't know what's, it's still not starting again. This is crazy. This DLC is really bugged on some aspect. I don't know why is it still paused. Ah, perfect, finally. Took some time. But yeah, so as I was saying, there are other YouTubers that have started, so don't hesitate to check it out. In particular, folks, I'll put in the description below after the stream ends the link to his channel for those of you who don't know him. I think it'd be interesting for you to watch. You know, he's trying with the dockland versus mine without any dockland elements. That will definitely show different results. Less than 1 minute, so we'll be waiting for that before moving on to what I wanted to show you around my min-maxing plan. If you've missed it, I've also recently posted a couple of videos on this new DLC. One is around the panorama effect, explaining, you know, how to get the, let's say, the best layout to get the best panorama effect, and actually explaining a bit, you know, the layout you want to follow and why and how the panorama effect. And this is actually sort of an example of how it will work. You will see mostly, and it's hard to see, but maybe looking like this, yeah. You'll see mostly level 5 and level 4, surrounded by level 4. That's my my answer to, let's say, the panorama problems. If you can see, you know, there's level 4 without any panorama, and then level 5 fully intense. So really with a lot of population. The second video was also around the new items, which items to use, which not to use. And what's quite interesting with those new items, as I've actually started to see while preparing for my my new record, is some of these actually do impact old buildings too, and not just the new ones. So there's a couple of new things you can do, for example, around the steam engines or things like this, where you may want to use some of those new items too, and not just on the new buildings. So do you know, do check out that video, and don't hesitate to post any questions now in the chat. I see we have more and more people joining. It's great to see everybody, but don't hesitate to share in the chat who's there, and also what you're hoping to see, what you may have been discovering about this DLC. But now the tower is finally finished, so let's unveil it. Maybe let's go at night to unveil it, put some lights around. Okay, let me put a couple of lights first before we unveil it to the world. I actually forgot where those lights here are, so let's just go to investors. You know me, I'm not really the beauty player, a lot more the min-maxers, things like ornaments like that. My cup of tea. You know where they are. Okay, a couple of lights. They are moving on their own, so you can put them pretty much however you want. They will still do something interesting. And Fire Dash and Rich Media. I'm probably butchering your names, and sorry about that. But thanks for joining, and don't hesitate to share what you're hoping to see tonight. This is now time to unveil this grand tower, the Skyline Tower. Let's finish the phase. And here it is. As you can see, higher than my level 5 by quite a bit. Donnie's in awe of his tower. He has a big ego. And we can start to see the mechanics that we're gonna explain in just a minute. Let's start with the simple one, which is the happiness. It is similar to a normal investor house. Not even, I mean, same as the skyscrapers, it's just the old ones. From the penny farthing to the gramophones. This one is sort of easy, there's nothing new. What will be a lot more interesting is around the population you're gonna see some different elements. We're gonna go into that in 1 second after taking the picture. And yes, indeed, I will continue to not use the dockland for my record. The goal is really to get as many investors as possible without the dockland, and one of the goals in this episode tonight is really to show you actually how I'm going about that and some of the math behind it. I know some people may be bored by the math, but actually, if you really want to do min-maxing, you do have to do some math, I think. And here it is, we have a classic Anno Chronicle. Every time we finish, a monument or a key quest. And see, she continues to speak with Donnie, and we're gonna have a couple of choices to make. While this loads, let's actually look. Oh, here it is. Let's go for it. Okay, a post-mortem. Let's see. I've talked to workers and citizens, and there's a lot of contention surrounding the Skyline Towers. That's strange, they didn't tell me anything. Due to its immense height, the workers have felt that throughout the construction, their safety has been at risk. A lot of citizens too. In this interest, we want you to undersign a bill to guarantee a limit of 1 Skyline Tower per city. The thing is, you don't really have a choice, but basically it's Anno's developer's way to explain to you that you may build 1 per city, so per island, not more. But at least what's quite interesting is that you actually can build 1 per city, and it's not just 1 for your entire empire, like the research institute, for example. So 1 per island is something that it brings something interesting. And hi, Thomas, great to see you back here. Love to see all the regulars every time. So indeed, as I was saying, having 1 per city is quite nice, because now we're gonna be able to, for min-maxers, to understand, in what island does it make sense to have 1 versus which island it doesn't make sense to. And obviously, I think you can understand it's gonna be about the size of the island, but of course, there's a bit more to it. So let's continue and see. Okay, as he said, he doesn't really have a choice. He thought he would be only making 1 anyway, so 1 per city is a lot more than what he expected. It's fine with that. And then they say, oh, we should actually dedicate it to a cause. And here, that's where it gets interesting. Because you have 3 choices. 1 is to environmental awareness, and that gives you attractiveness. 1 is to anti-consumerism, where you decrease the consumption by 10% for carriages, jewelry, and pocket watches. And the last one is actually both of these. As you can see, you get the attractiveness and the reduced consumption. Which, why is that? Because basically based on your your choices in the quest, you may not get this one, but because we made the right choices, basically we were safe, we can do this one. So here it is. I'm obviously gonna choose this one. I definitely don't want to say no to part of the bonus. She continues talking a bit, saying that she wants to leave, he doesn't want her to leave, etc. Let's not really look at that. Let's focus now on here, these needs, or let's say the inhabitants or the residents of the tower. As you can see, while it is a Skyline Tower, so let's say a skyscraper, you don't have the skyscraper's goods. These are the old investor goods, from the glasses to the steam carriages. So that's what you need to provide to get, let's say, your first investors. And you can see, this is 800, 400, 400, 400, 100, 100, 100, and 200. So these ones are not that much. This one's a bit more. And if you add all of these, they're going to give you 1,500 if I'm not mistaken, or 2,500. Because this, to get to 4,000, is all of this plus here 1,500. So indeed, it must be 2,500 for all of this. Now, how do you get these ones? Well, it's basically based on your department store, furniture store, and drugstore on the island. The more you have, or the more you're giving, the more you're going to get investors. That's a bit how it works. As you can see, I mean, right now, where are they? I think they're here. We have a couple, yeah, right? We have this one, this one, this one. Now, if I start adding a few more, let's see what happens. So we can, one more here, one more. So right now they are paused, right? There's nothing on it. So nothing has really changed. Now, if we put, so let's see what we are giving right now. We're giving toasters, okay? I want to show you a couple of elements. First of all, let's give toasters again. See what happens. So let's give toaster. It is. It needs to get the resources, so it hasn't started yet. So I don't think it is showing yet. No. Then let's see when it does appear, what will happen. Maybe while I'm at it, let's put another here for later. And one element also I want to show you, let me build it right away, very far. Yeah. So it is now quite far, right? It is just, you can see it in the green, as always overlay, how far it's going in terms of providing the bonus. It's definitely not going to the tower, and we're gonna see if it does still bring something or not. Oh, the game seems quite slow tonight, even at full speed. While this is happening, while we're waiting for this, don't hesitate to share once again your thoughts about this DLC, any question you might have. Also, requests for other videos. I'm always keen to hear, especially now that we've sort of done the basic on this DLC. I'm planning to now move fully into my new, record. So keen to also from time to time show you other things, maybe new modes, things like this. So don't hesitate to ask for that. Okay, so a date is coming slowly but surely. Deliver. And it will start. Perfect. 2%. Okay, this is starting. So let's see what has happened. We are still at 20%. Why? Because this is still the same, right? This is offering the same thing versus now, if I offer the vacuum cleaner, let's see what will happen. Of course, it needs to also get it from there. So obviously, I think you'll get the gist pretty quickly of how it works, but just wanted to really show you step by step so that you don't miss anything. What's interesting is here you can really see not just the 4,000, but you can also see moving in at 2,800, which is how many are going to move in right now based on what I'm giving. So I'm giving all of this and only 20% for these things. While we're waiting, one thing to look at too is, if I stop the chocolate here, what will happen? So I'm stopping it here, right? So I'm losing the 100 investors, but what happens on the skyscrapers? Well, what happens is you also lose it for your skyscrapers and also, where is it? Yeah, here. Also for your normal investors. So that's something, that I I sort of understand from a game mechanic, it was a lot easier for the developers, I think, to do it like this. Honestly, I would have loved if it wasn't that way, if we could have stopped, even per level of investors, because I think that would have brought a lot of super interesting, calculations to make. I would have definitely, and I'll explain that. Sorry, let me pause that for now. If I forget to tell you about it very quickly, I'll explain what I mean, because that's some of the calculations I've been making. So basically you see that, yeah, if you stop it for either the skyscraper or the skyline, it stops it everywhere, which can create bad things. So yeah, let's unpause it. And now we can see the department store moved to 40 because this guy here has started. So we have 2 out of the 5. Is why we're at 40 out of 100%. Now let me show you the last thing is, does it have to be in range? So let's take this one and let's give this one. Okay, is there? Oh yeah, it's in range, so that's good. Going text, maybe it's gonna take. Let me just put it there. You go here. Why is it not going? Oh, it doesn't have electricity. Sorry, my bad. So let's put. No, I don't have gas in reserve, so actually I can't give gas. So I will just give normal electricity. Up. Perfect. I just need to wait for it to deliver. Then it should be fine. To make sure that that I'm not lying, we can also stop this one, because as we've seen, this is useless. To get to the maximum investors in the Skyline, as you can see, you need to basically have 5 department store, 5 furniture store, 5 drugstores, but you also need to give each of them needs to have a different recipe or patent, right? You're gonna need to give all 5, which means you also need to unlock all of them, and you need to have those resources, and you're gonna need to sort of live with the bonuses. And by that I mean, let's say that I'm doing an island which is a min-max island with only investor, right? I may not want to put that guy here. And sure, maybe I'm okay with it because it gives me less cigars, but it gives me less leather boots, which I don't care about for investors, right? And similarly for some of the other arcades, if we look at it, the shopping arcade, this thing here, telephones and the pocket watches, I don't care about it that much, right? For an investor island, some of them I may be fine having, for example, maybe having this one and that one, I'm fine. It sort of gives me good stuff for my investors versus those ones don't. So you already see a sort of a first trade-off, which is that if you want to have your Skyline to the maximum of population, you're going to need to use space that you may not have want to use in terms of min-maxing for investors, for all of the rest of your investors on the island, which is once again why the size of the island will definitely be linked to, is it a good idea to put a Skyline Tower on this island or not if you're trying to do a record. I won't get into all of the math for that one in this stream, but don't hesitate to post question and I'll definitely cover it at some point. We're going to cover some other things for now. So this one has started just now, so this one should start. It's going now to get the thing from the warehouses. The other thing, obviously, if you're giving all 5 of these recipes, right, is you need to bring to this island where the tower is, all of those goods, right? You're gonna need to bring all of this. Some of it from Mbesa, some of it from the Arctic, etc. So this is also one more complexity, let's say, in terms of min-maxing for the Skyline Tower. But definitely there are some ways where that tower can be interesting. Okay, so now this thing should... Oh, I'm missing clay. That's bad. Why don't I have clay? Please go fast. And there should definitely go quite quickly. So anyway, we'll see pretty fast this. Please do tell me in the chat if there's anything you want me to cover about, you know, the skyscrapers, the tower. This is almost now or never, given that after this we're gonna move on to my record plan and not really look at this for a while. So don't hesitate. I'm also keen to hear, you know, what you've discovered, what are the things that you're still playing around this new DLC. So I can potentially help you and may also, you know, discover things I may have not seen yet. There's definitely quite a bit of things happening in this new DLC. You know, some of the chains are quite complex, as we've seen at the beginning. Things that you need to do in the new world, in the old world. This one being definitely the most complex, as we all know by now. These toys. Anno is making babies, like many people like to joke about. Okay, so I think that by now we're good. Should come just now. Come on. For everybody who's watching, I'm also considering what is the next game I want to start playing. I've been playing quite a bit also Total War Armor 2 these past few weeks. I haven't done that many videos on it yet, but if you're interested, do tell me. I will make more of it. But apart from that, I'm considering actually two games. One is the Transport Fever 2, which I know is not a new game, but I've heard a lot of great things and honestly seen quite a good min-maxing game. So I'd love to spend some time on it. And the other one is quite different. It's I actually forgot the name. The name is escaping me now. It's a game that is in early access on how to create a bit of a drug empire, basically. So you have to manage your dirty money, your clean money, and all of this. So, and I mistake great for you to join. And Thomas, yeah, no, I see obviously that it's, as you said, it's always good to discover some of those things for yourself. But of course, if you're stuck somewhere, or if you have questions, don't hesitate, to ask. So let's check, and as you can see now, we indeed moved to 60%. So once again, those department store or any arcades don't have to be in range of the Skyline Tower to count into this population bonus. So once again, you will need 15, 5 of each, 5 department store, 5 furniture store, 5 drugstores, each of them with a different recipe or a patent, but they don't need to be in range. So you can definitely, on an island like 1-4, that's definitely easy, right? You can, having 15 building like this, you have the space. On an island like this, for example, I hope you can see that it just doesn't make sense. And that's not gonna be a lot of people that will be able to fit. I'm not saying it doesn't make sense to have the Skyline at all. What I'm saying is it doesn't make sense to, like, you won't get that 1500. So to be able to calculate if it makes sense to have the skyline, we're gonna need to make sure we don't count 4000, we count way less. That's what I meant, sorry. So now let's move to the actual, my plan for this DLC. And as I said, I'm not going to use the dockland at all for resources, right? I will build, this dockland thing. And why am I building it? Well, mostly for the depots and for the piers. And those depots are amazing, right? Each, as you can, this is one of them. Each depot is 100 of capacity versus your normal depots are just 50, right? And they take these ones, they're 50. So it's already double. And the space, this is like the equivalent of basically three depots. So there's no comparison for sure. To get nice storage, you want to use dockland, and similarly, that gives you those great piers. Not the fastest or anything, but that's already great. And the last thing is I may also put a few. What's that called? Where is it? Arbor Masters to get more item slots, to have things like increasing the loading speed and things like this. So we'll put the building, but will not trade any resources. And then the key thing that you want to do as a min-maxer is make sure that the space that you're using is optimized for what you're using it for, right? And in the past, it often meant that you want to give everything. So you are taking, for example, for an investor house, skyscraper or not, you're taking 9 tiles, right? 3 by 3. So for these 3 tiles, you are saying, I need to maximize that space, so I'm going to give as much as I can. And it was, for example, very much the case in my previous record for the scholars, because and if you haven't seen my scholar run through, don't hesitate to check the last episode where you can see I have basically the whole old world covered, both Cape Town, both the Cape region here, but also the first region, completely covered with scholars, which gives you around 2.5 million scholars. But I could actually even produce more goods than that. It's just that I don't have enough space to put more scholar houses. So that's, the space to put the houses is definitely the limit here. Versus for the skyscrapers now, given that we can put so many people in one skyscraper, we will actually, it will be a bit the opposite, is you can, if you put all of your islands covered with skyscrapers, you won't have enough space in the other regions, and in particular in the New World, to be able to feed them all. So now, a key interesting element is knowing what are you going to feed them, and why it gets really interesting is 2 points. One is each of the resources don't give you the same amount of people and money, right? For example, glasses here, you can see 16 people. Coffee at the maximum is 8. Here, chocolate is 2, right? So it's if you look here, it's 2 out of 150, right? That's like nothing. That's just less than 2%. So this chocolate is nothing for a level 4 skyscraper. Problem, or the interesting thing, is when you move to a level 5 with full panorama effect, your coffee, for example, is still at 8, but now your chocolate is at 27. So if you are thinking, and that's why I was saying earlier that I would have loved for it to be disconnected, but now it is not disconnected. If I stop the chocolate on level 4, it is automatically stopped on the level 5 too. So that doesn't work, like to do it level only on one level. What you need to do is to think holistically. And basically what you need to do is really think, if I'm gonna have, let's say, for example, 2/3 of my islands with level 4 and 1/3 or level 5 with full panorama, how many does that mean the chocolate is bringing on average, right? And similarly for the chocolate and all of those type of things. So that's one thing we're gonna look at now. The other element I wanted to show you before we move on is how to calculate really, or how to plan for the consumption. There are, of course, a number of calculators out there. I'm going to show you one, but it's one that actually will never be perfect. And the key reason is because of those things here. See, in the past, those calculators were pretty perfect because you could tell how much population you want or you're gonna have. You could tell, what newspaper article you're giving, things like this. But now it gets a lot more complex because you're going to have those things like department stores, which will give you, reduced consumptions, but they will probably not reach everywhere, right? I mean, here they pretty much do, except almost there for that one, for example, doesn't reach here. But you can imagine that on a bigger island, I may have more houses that are not covered. And it's the same also for your town halls, right? If you, for example, where is the town hall? Yeah. You put a town hall like this, and you put something like, Aristella. I don't know if I have them. No, I don't have it here. Aristella, which, gives you the champagne. Like, you don't need to provide champagne, but you don't need to provide champagne to all of those people here, right? These people here, for example, are not covered by this town hall, which means that it's not as if I can say 0 champagne for my whole empire, right? I can only say 0 champagne. Like, I can say 0 champagne here, but not there. Like, this will require some champagne. The good thing is that we do have control Q, which shows you for this island what you need, right? It shows you, for example, at this point, champagne 6. And of course, the population of this island, right? We know, for example, here it is right now 49,000 or more. Importantly, I would say the maximum is 51,000 because let's remember that your consumption is actually based on the maximum and it's not based on the current. So anyway, we have the control Q, right? So we can just say, for 51,000, I need, for example, 6, right? So for 4 million, I need 4 million times 6 divided by 51,000. And that gives you how many champagne you need. There is one small problem, to be honest, which is that this 6 is actually not exactly 6. It could be 6.1, 6.2, etc. So what you really know is that you need between 6 and 7, let's say, right? It gives you sort of a range on what you will need for your 4 million. So now let's move on to exactly a bit some of the calculations I've been doing, and starting with what I told you earlier, which is these calculators. There's a number out there. This is one that's quite famous, right, where you can definitely put how many people you want. You can say, what newspaper article you're using. You can even say what you're putting into your town halls. But as I was saying before, town halls are also, your shopping arcades and things like this. What you do have to be careful is that if you select this one, for example, it sort of applies that all of your people are affected by this, which in reality we know won't be the case. Some of them will, but not all. And similarly for your champagne, right? So that's why this is not perfect. in terms of what you will actually need, right? Because, for example, now it says I don't need champagne anymore, which will not be true. I mean, if you're doing min-maxing, you will never have only people in your town hall radius. You will of course put people in between those radiuses. But it can give you a pretty good idea of how much you need. So for example, here I've put 4 million investors split in between 2 million in level 5, 2 million in level 4. Actually, sorry, here it should say 300. That gives you the number of houses that you're gonna. It even gives you, how many houses and things like this. But as I said, this won't be perfect. It just gives you sort of a rough idea of what's necessary. What, in my opinion, is a bit more perfect is actually doing the calculations yourself. And the perfect calculation would be, you take the exact consumption rate of all of these things, you multiply by the exact number of houses that will have that consumption. For example, for champagne, you need to calculate exactly how many houses won't be in the radius of your town halls. That honestly is not great. Like, nobody's gonna do it. I'm not saying nobody's gonna do that, but I'm saying I don't suggest you do it, because at the end of the day, you don't need to know perfectly to the decimal what will be your consumption from the start. You need to have a rough idea so you can plan your islands. But then, what you need is planning those islands, and when you get very close to finishing, when most of your population, your houses have been placed and all of this, then you're going to do final optimization. Because you'll go to control Q and you'll know exactly what you need at that point. But you do need to have a rough idea. And as I said, for me, the rough idea is actually look at what you're consuming and just multiply that to whatever you're looking for. So that's what you can see a bit here. You can sort of ignore those columns here for now. Let me just hide them. Where is it here? So what does it say? It's all of the goods that bring populations, all of the goods that bring money, and then these are the goods that are needed for my for the recipes or the shopping arcades to function. Then I've put a number of items, and after those items I go to this consumption. Okay, it says, for example, I need 5 glasses. On the champagne, for example, I needed only 1 because I put Stella in the town halls, things like this. And as I was saying, it appears as 1, but we don't know exactly if it's 1. It could be 1.1, could be something like this. So what I've written is it appears like this, but the maximum would be this plus 1, right? And then this is for a maximum actually of 57,900 of population with 229 houses to be precise. And this, you see that with control Q, right? Like, you don't have to do anything. And then I said, okay, if I scale that to 4 million people, what does that mean? It means, I probably need, if it's purely scaled to this number that appears this, it will be 345. If it is to the max, it's 414.5. So basically, the reality is in between those two things. I'm not saying I'm going for 4 million, but what I put 4 million is for 2 reasons. One, it's because in my previous record, I reached more than 3 million, so I wanted to go for a number that's bigger. And the second reason that I went for a number a bit big, but that may not be my final record number, is because I wanted to make sure there was kind of scale of this. And the reason why I didn't go yet for the exact number I want to do is because here, in this first step, I'm not planning exactly my population. What I'm planning is to calculate which good I'm going to give versus which good I'm not going to give. And to explain exactly what I mean, we need to move a bit to here. And if you have any questions looking a bit at this file, I know this is not pretty. Honestly, I've just started that in the last few days. Right now, I'm making the calculations a bit quick and dirty. I'm not making it pretty, but don't hesitate to post any questions in the chat. What I did here now is to look at the level 5s with full panorama effect, the level 4 with no panorama effect, looking at what population and what money they are bringing. Okay, so for example, as we saw before, with level 5 and 10s, your chocolate is bringing 27 versus level 4 with no panorama, it's only bringing 2 people. And then, if you look at the sort of 2/3, 1/3 combination of those level 5 and level 4, you can see what, on average, my house would be. So it would be 16 for glasses, but actually for chocolate, for example, it's 10. It's not 2, it's not 27, it's 10. Of course, if you don't go exactly for 2/3, 1/3, and I'm actually going to, right now I've put 2/3, 1/3 as a first, rough calculation, but now I will soon go into actually calculating how much I want this number to be, which is linked a bit to the video I made on the perfect layout. And Thomas, your question is, I'm making those tables. I'm not, it's all things that you can just copy from the game in Control Q, or you can also use bit calculators like this. If you don't know, you can also look into the wiki or this other website that you may know that shows you all of the items and things like this. But basically, I'm creating those tables by myself, just making those calculations. I know a lot of people hate things like this. Personally, I think if you really want to be a min-maxer, you have to love those things. I mean, that's what min-maxing is all about, is to calculate what will make the most sense. So anyway, I was saying, I'm calculating how much population will be brought on average per houses. And then this is the important element. Now we need to calculate how many tiles are going to be taken to produce those things, right? So for example, if we say, I'm going to need 400 glasses, and these on average will bring 16 people, how much tiles does it take to produce those 400 glasses? And then if we divide that by the 16, right? If you divide this tile by the 16, you know per population how many tiles it takes. And what I wanted to show you today very quickly, right, is, for example, coffee. We all know how much coffee investors drink, because we know, the consumption are crazy. And you can see, for example, we need for this 4 million here, I'm gonna need 2,000 coffee beans per minute. And you can see that here, right, it's actually going to take me almost 50,000 tiles, right, of space to make this 2,000 coffee in the most efficient way possible. And we're gonna look at that, because that's important to look at, right? I'm not saying in the basic way, I'm saying in the most efficient way, it will take me 50,000 only for 8 people, right? So it's 6,000 tiles per people, versus for the glasses, it takes me less than 500 tiles to get 1 people, which means, if you do it very quickly, like black and white, it's a lot better to have 2 houses of skyscrapers to whom you give glasses, but you don't give them any coffee, rather than having 1 house in which you're going to give both of those things, which is where it gets really interesting, right? Because now what I'm trying to do is to calculate those numbers. I'm going to show you a bit how for all of those elements here. And that way I'm going to be able to decide what I will actually give to people, how many houses I'm going to need, and how much space that's going to take. And in particular, looking at regions like the New World, where we may be very limited in terms of space, is that going to be enough to feed all those people? So that's basically sort of the goal around this new, this new record of investors. I really want to plan it a bit first before diving into it. Because if you've seen my Scholar run, you've seen things, for example, like the Pig Island that I made. First of all, I made it in the Old World, whereas I should have made it in the Cape. The second thing is I made it too big, so then at the end I had to delete half of it because half of it wasn't needed. Or very recently also I was like, okay, let's start with a coffee island because I know how much coffee we're gonna need. But then now looking at this calculation, I'm like 99% sure I'm actually going to need to delete completely this island because I'm not going to give coffee actually to investor at all, and I'm going to focus on other goods. So that's why, once again, I want to actually spend a bit of time focusing first on making this preparation, this plan, because the plan is also not just about which goods to give, it's where to make them. And why I say where to make them is because of the local departments. Some bonuses are a lot more powerful than others when used right. And in particular, you have things like the Labor Act, which improves your farms like crazy, versus the Skilled Labor Acts, which improves your heavy industries like the new goods industries like crazy, versus the 4 item the local departments. So depending on the good, I may want to be using one or the other, and therefore they can't be on the same island, right? So I need to plan that. Now, if we look a bit at how I've done those things, I'm pretty sure that now I'm starting to lose a few of you. You're thinking this is going to be a boring video. If you're still here or if you're thinking about leaving, do tell me, if you're interested about this, if you're not. I think, some people may be interested into it, so that's why I'm showing it. But if you all think this is crap, just tell me and we'll move on. Basically, just looking quickly, at some of those calculations. If you look at the tab for glasses here, there are usually a number of items, and also, as I said, number of different local department policies that you can choose, right? And depending on what you choose, they will take more or less space. So that's what you have to do. Then, so let's look at the glasses, right? There are a couple of options. For example, you can use less workforce. You can use the one that gives you productivity with electricity. You could also use the one that gives you 4 items. Then you have a number of items, right? You can see the items inside the game. You can also use this website I showed here, where, if we go to glasses, which are, where are the glasses engineers? Yeah, here. Click here, you can see all of the items. You can choose your own combination of items and see the results. Or you can also use the external asset viewer, where if you select whatever thing, you can see all of the items. And Thomas, to your question, is that making me lose the pleasure of playing, let's say? So I think I would obviously never tell to someone who's just discovering the game to do what I'm doing now. But first, you need to discover the game, you need to play the campaign, you need to make some mistakes, learn, what's working, what's not working for you. But at this point, for me, I've already tried everything in the game, let's say. So I definitely want to see the next challenge, and for me the next challenge is really to find this optimum, this thing on what is the best production way for each of those elements. And what I actually find interesting is that I'm still discovering new things in terms of, I thought this production was more efficient because if you put this item, the productivity is higher, but then actually when you calculate it tile by tile, you see that another item is better because it is giving you a byproduct or something to use it that way. So yeah, that's I guess a bit why I'm doing it like this. But once again, I'm definitely not saying this is something you should do when you first discover the game, right? Like this is more, and I mean, I'm pretty sure I know that is also what somebody like Fox is doing, somebody like Zazuno is doing, because that's the only way. I mean, to try to do min-maxing via trial and error directly in the game would take us years and years, because some of those things, like if I want to compare option 1, which has a certain item, with option 2, which has a completely different item that will change, for example, the needs. And you can see that, for example, on the Steam. Let me show you here. For the Steam carriages, where is it? Yeah, here. For the Steam carriages, there is an item that will make you use chassis and filaments, and another that will make you use chassis and steam motors. To actually compare that in game will take forever to build fully those two chains, versus to do it just out of the game in pure math didn't take me more than like 10 minutes. So that's why it definitely doesn't look great. Some people may hate it, but at this point, to get to our records, I think that's totally necessary. And honestly, I'm not using the docklands, right? And to me, it's because I feel the docklands is really completely breaking the game, where you can just import something on one island, then transport it to another island, then export it on that second island, make a profit out of it. Like that's just purely crazy. But actually, the math behind optimizing docklands are even more complex than this. So in some way, I'm making my life a bit easier with not using dockland. So now I'm moving just a bit to explain, some of those calculations. Is if you look at this one, I'm using, those 3 items, which will give you the reason for those 3 items is so that I don't have any workforce. Versus this one, you put ferrous instead of the bell. Therefore, I will have some workforce, but a higher productivity type of thing. And then that's the key thing is you calculate the productivity, and therefore you calculate how many seconds it takes to produce something, therefore how many you produce per minute. And based on knowing how much we need to produce, right? We know we need to produce 414 at the maximum. You can calculate how many buildings we're gonna need. For example, here, I know I'm gonna need 156 glass maker, or I don't know what they're called, to be honest. But 156 of those buildings to produce what I need for those 4 million investors, right? I also know I don't need any workforce, because as I said, this brings me to 0 workforce, and therefore I can calculate the tiles needed for that production, which is sort of this number of building time the size of those buildings. Usually for those calculations, I'm excluding the roads and things like this, because the goal is not to calculate exactly how many tiles I'm gonna need. It's more to compare one production versus another. So I don't need to go to that level of detail of calculating also exactly how many roads. But yeah, you can calculate that. I need basically in that situation 3,700 and something tiles, versus in this situation I need only 3,300 for the actual buildings. But because I need almost 14,000 engineers as workforce, I'm gonna need tons of tiles for the houses for those engineers and the production to feed those engineers. I didn't put the exact number here, because honestly it's way more than this. So it's clear here, even just with this, it's clear that this one is winning. Then you can't really stop that, because stop there, sorry. I mean, if you really want to compare, because what we want is not just to find the best way to make glasses, is we want to compare glasses versus something else, right? So we're gonna need to also look at, to make those glasses, we're gonna need wood and we're gonna need glass, right? But we're also going to produce some glass as a byproduct thanks to the optometrist, and we're also going to produce some pocket watches thanks to Gerhard. For the glasses, it's easy. It's sort of fed back into the loop, right? So instead of needing 400 glasses, I only need 300. That's easy to, let's say, calculate. For the pocket watches, it's a bit harder. Basically, the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to do two calculations. One here is, if I don't consider any byproduct, here is the number of time. And then I'm going to do a second one here is including byproducts. And what I mean by that is here. Let me show you very quickly what is, because I've done it for this one here. When you produce light bulbs, you actually also create, depending on which item you use, of course, but if there are some items for which if you produce light bulbs, you're also going to produce steam carriages, and vice versa, actually. So what I've done is I've calculated how many tiles we need, and so this is pretty ugly like this. How many tiles we need to produce all those light bulbs? How many do we need to produce all those steam carriages? And then if you look here, for example, so I'm producing all of those light bulbs, right? And when I produce them, I'm actually producing as a byproduct, thanks to this item Rami, 36 steam carriages. And what that means, what you can do then is say, okay, if as it's great to see you, but it must be so late for you, and you need to go to sleep. But it's great that you're here. Thanks. I know you probably don't want to see your first episode as a math episode. I promise. At the beginning of the stream, I was in game, but now I'm showing a bit of math. I have Thomas who's really interested into it. So thanks, Thomas, for all of the comments and questions. But yeah, it's so as I was saying, we're producing 36. So what you can do now is say, okay, those 36 is actually space that I won't need to use via the normal way of producing steam carriages. So that means basically that you can do this, where like this. So those let's say 37 steam carriages are actually the equivalent of 2,700 tiles. So if I go into the light bulbs, if I don't count any of the byproducts, it actually takes me 13,000 tiles to produce all of this. But now you can make sort of an effect number of tiles, which is accounting for those equivalent spaces that we won't need to use anymore. So now I can do this one, and I also need to still calculate pocket watches, which I haven't done yet. Now we can see that actually those light bulbs, to produce those 600 light bulbs, instead of taking 13,000, in reality, it's as if it only takes 10,000 to produce them. So that is, that is something important that brings a lot of complexity with items that produce byproducts, but which is, really where you get the optimization. Because if you only count, the basic way to do a product, you will never get anywhere. For example, I know that Fox And once again, I'll post the description to his channel below. Has posted a video tonight on how to make ethanol in M-Pesa. Whereas, if you only trying to play the best game, you're going to produce all of your ethanol in the new world. And honestly, it's gonna take the whole new world to produce ethanol for a couple of million of people. So that's obviously the worst way to do it. But the only way to see if it's better to use something else is a bit to calculate. Because you're not gonna spend 5 days making your whole new world covered with ethanol and then cover also the M-Pesa with ethanol and compare, right? Like, you don't want to do that. So making a bit of some of those math is actually how you can avoid doing all of this. So yeah, that's, as I was saying, a bit what I've been doing, to calculate that this is how much you need for glasses. Once again, without any byproducts. I'm going to first do, oh, that's a bad typo. As I said again, this is not very pretty, but anyway, first without byproducts, but then more importantly will be with byproducts, and that's where I'll be able to make the decisions on what we do. But also, as I was saying earlier, is that it's really important to know where I'm going to do those things. So for example, here I said I'm going to use an island, which won't be the control because I'm going to use the minus 50% workforce versus, if you look on this one, the steam carriage is, the light bulbs I'm not gonna make control for, but then, those ones I want to make all on the same island where I'm gonna have a lot of sand, versus this one I'm actually going to make control for because I'm going to use the skilled labor act, versus something like the grain. I'm pretty sure I'm going to make it on another island where I'm going to put the labor act, right? Really, and let me show you very quickly in game what I mean by that. If we go to the palace, this is where a lot of it is important. Is look at this one, Land Reform Act, grain, ops, all of these new these old world goods, 1 out of 2, and this is huge. Similarly, this one for all of the advanced things like steel, brass, steam carriages, but also all of the new ones, biscuit, typewriters, lacquer, 1 out of 3. Right? This is huge. Versus, in some of the island, you may want to use the +1. So answering your question, Azreda, do you think that's what the devs intending for min-maxers to find out, the items, etc.? I'm not sure I understand your question, but I will say that one thing I really like about Anno, contrary to some other games, is actually how this information is available. Like, you can really calculate everything. Compare about some other games, often it's all of the calculations are sort of in the back. You can never know how those things actually work. Think about the deaths in many of the survival game, for example. The chance of one of your peasants dying or things like this are usually completely obscure, completely black box, and therefore you can't really optimize that unless you do tons of 200 trial and error things. Versus the one in Anno, that's what I really like, to be honest. I don't know if that answers your question, Azreda, but that's definitely a key thing. Then, do you really need that many steam carriages? Well, that's the calculation I've made, that I need between 140 and 210, basically, for this 4 million target. If we go to more than 4 million, That's it. And indeed, I think, you know, the ethanol thing, I mean, for me, I'm still doing a few calculations, but I think it was super clear that they indeed wanted us to think about ethanol in a, let's say, indirect way, right? Because even if you think about schnapps or champagne, right, you can already make a lot of ethanol there, and that that's without counting the goat method in Embesa for sure. You know, I think that item was definitely when the first time I saw it, I was like, okay, this is the most important item is in this all new DLC. And for those of you who don't know which item I'm talking about, let me show you quickly. It is an all drinks production item. Get Rich Volume 4, and you can see it works on lemonade, chewing gum, cognac, but also all drinks. And all drinks is many, many things. And it produces ethanol at 1.4, which is not huge per se, but it can be quite a bit when when you combine a couple of different things. And this is important because we're gonna need tons of ethanol, right? I mean, if we look at, once again here, we're gonna need ethanol. Oh, sorry, let me show you directly in game. That's easier. We look at our consumables. We don't need ethanol too much at the beginning, like for example, chewing gum doesn't need, but celluloid does, and then celluloid and ethanol are used in many things. The first one is lacquer that uses ethanol, and then as you can see, this one already uses lacquer. This one uses celluloid, so that uses ethanol too. You can see all of these. So that's quite a bit. I think, you know, if you look at a couple of million of investors, you're definitely talking about more than 1,000 ethanol. So we're gonna need quite a bit, which is why definitely this is an important one, and this is part of those calculations, right? Just showing, you know, a couple of elements in the light bulbs and steam carriages. That's, you know, it gets interesting. There's two ways to make, for example, light bulbs, normal way, but also with the... Oh, sorry, Thomas, you said you didn't understand everything. Can you tell me maybe what you missed, and I'll be happy to share. Or you can tell me if I'm going too quickly, maybe, or maybe it's a sound, I don't know. But yeah, don't hesitate. I know I definitely don't want you to feel lost or miss something. And yes, thanks, as we're definitely getting close to the 500 subs. So if you're watching, if you have seen some of my videos and you haven't subscribed, please do take the time to subscribe. And for you, it's just one click. For me, that actually does change a lot. First of all, when we do reach 500, then I will be able to post community posts. So you'll be able to see a bit more what I'm thinking, what I'm planning. You can vote on things like this. And also, to be honest, the more subscriber one has, the more YouTube actually pushes the videos. So more people will be able to see them. And lastly, I'll remind everybody, let's say that content creators like myself actually don't earn a single cent, any money at all from YouTube until we reach 1,000 subscribers. Until then, YouTube skips everything. So that's definitely why. If you're not a subscriber, please do subscribe. Please, please, please. Okay. So, you know, looking at the light bulbs, very different items you can look at. Then, you know, what's really interesting to me is going into something like this, like the steam carriages, two completely different ways of doing it, right? Also, as I mentioned at the beginning, for some of those old productions like steam carriages, don't forget you can use some of the new items like this gate reach gives you 80% productivity and minus 80 workforce. That's probably one of the only broken item of this new DLC. As well, do you mean the layouts that you see on the page here, or do you mean the layouts on my actual game? Because these are, pure. I'm not saying I'm gonna use these layouts. It's just to give an idea on the size of things actually. Because here, if you can see on the size, you can see the number of tiles. So just to simplify a bit some of my calculations, but indeed, when we actually get into placing those buildings on the map, there are things like electricity coverage. There's also things like the islands are not perfectly square, right? So that's where it gets a lot more complex. And to your point earlier, Thomas, that's also why, for me, the game is still very interesting, right? It's not as if as soon as I have finished the calculations, I know exactly and I'm done. I still need to do it and to do the actual optimization on the ground. Let's say those calculations that I'm doing now is to give me the direction, to tell me, should I make coffee or should I ignore coffee completely? Should I use, in this case here, Susanna, or should I use Bruno? Because if you ask 10 different Anno players, depending on what they're doing, their objectives and things, they may actually give you completely different answers. And obviously, let's say the beginner player will probably not even know those two items. Somebody, for example, who uses Dockland like crazy may tell you Bruno, but given I'm not using Dockland, I had to make the calculation to know by myself. And what it means, is with Susanna, you'd have the filaments versus with Bruno, you're gonna have the steam motors, but more importantly than that, with Susanna, you're creating light bulbs versus with Bruno, you're creating steam motors and heavy weapons, right? So then the steam motors are fed back in because you need them into the need here versus the light bulbs is a production on top. So that creates those equivalent tiles I talked about earlier. And the heavy weapons, basically, if you're an heavy Dockland user, then you really care about them because you're gonna sell them for something else. Versus, I said I'm not using Dockland, so I actually don't care. So for me, it's as if they don't exist. Then you have to actually calculate, right? For example, for filaments, I've done it. I think, a bit earlier. It takes 1,600, let's say, tiles to produce this. For the steam motors, it actually takes more. It takes 2,300. And the steam motors are down there here. You can see, because for the steam motors, once again, it's not just the space you need for the steam motors, which is 1,300, but it's also, then you need steel and brass, which each will take you some space, even if you optimize them, because you're going to use, your skill labor act and things like this. You're going to have a 445% productivity with best items possible. It still takes space, so in total, it takes more. So in that case, here, it was quite clear that for me, Susanna was a lot better. Once again, if you're using Dockland, yeah, I understand Bruno is better. For me, way better. So that's a bit the calculations. Right now, I'm looking at grain. And I'm looking at grain for two reasons. The first one is because we're going to need grain for biscuits. And the second is that grain is a way to produce champagne. I may not do tons and tons of videos in the next few weeks, but I'm also keen to hear your thoughts. If you want to see more of those math, a specific resource, for example, really explain in detail, or if you want to see, more mods or anything else, don't hesitate to, to put a comment below. Tell me what you'd like to see. Otherwise, indeed, I mean, this is my plan. I'm going to go No-dockland, trying to do at least 4 million, maybe more, depending on some of those calculations here, to do something that nobody else is doing, as far as I know, given that Fox is going to use Docklands, as is going to use Dockland. So yeah, I think this is a bit something unique. So if you want to see that, don't hesitate to subscribe to continue checking out the videos and to tell me. Otherwise, if no other questions or thoughts for the day, we may end the stream soon. So do tell me in the chat if there's anything else you'd like to see tonight. And thanks again for everybody that did join, especially as Reda. I know it's super late for you and you have tons of things going on your side. So really glad to see you tonight, or to see that you're here. It's obviously not as great as being able to see each other, but still. So yeah, it is. And maybe also to finish, let me just go back into the game, show you the tower. Also because, as I said, I mean, as you can imagine, I will pretty much start destroying all of this, given that the Cape needs to be a production island and not a people island like this. People island are gonna be all of the other islands like this one. But of course, some of them are also gonna be production, as I said, right? And for example, this could be the Grain Island. This could be my, because it has a lot of shore, it could be the island where, oh, actually it doesn't have that much shore. Maybe, oh yeah, here, a bit more. Anyway, I'll check which one has the more shore, because I want a lot of sand for all of the productions that require glass and sand. This one maybe. Then maybe another one will be the one where I put the production, where I want 4 items. We'll see, but there's definitely gonna be, a few islands with production in the Cape. I'm gonna try to do everything in the Cape, because some of them are gonna need to transport between them, and then from there, covering everything else with houses. For sure, the old world is gonna be covered by houses, so that's actually probably where I'll start. Maybe I will start in the corner, make it simple, but yeah. Need to start covering those islands with skyscrapers. One thing we didn't talk that much about today, where I may do an episode about it soon, is where does it make sense to have a Skyline Tower, and where does it make sense to have an what is it called? The fake Eiffel Tower. I always forget its name, because you may know I don't love the tourism DLC. What's the name of this thing? The Iron Tower. So where does it make sense to have it? So that then we can plan, obviously, for which island will have it and which won't. So anyway, I don't see any more comments or questions. So yeah, time to end this episode. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. Don't hesitate to press the like button, leave a comment below, and especially telling me what you want to see next. I'm very keen, in particular, also other games. I think I've been playing a lot of Anno. Maybe time to start spending a bit more time in other games too. Okay, thanks again for watching, everyone.